Broadcasting the information the mainstream media won't touch. This is The Richie Allen Show in association with DavidIke.com.
Let's have a chat, you and I then. There is a lot to talk about. Now, in a few minutes' time, I'm going to talk about the campaign against anti-Semitism because I eventually got a reply from them to my request for them to provide a spokesperson, hopefully Stephen Silverman. They got back to me and declined to come on the programme, and I will a little bit later in the hour or in the half hour talk about that and what's going on. By the way, and it's important that you listen to me carefully now, if you believe that David Icke is racist, is anti-Semitic, or anybody associated with DavidIke.com or indeed with this programme, if you believe that, you can call only 0161 408 2017. No, don't do that. Don't do that. I am a proper plonker, me. Let me give you that again. Right. If you believe David Icke is anti-Semitic, if he's a racist, or anybody else associated with him, call this number, 0161 408 and then 1984. 0161 408 1984. Do not call me if you are a supporter of David Icke, if you are a reader of his books and somebody who is in agreement with him. If you believe what the campaign against anti-Semitism is saying about David Icke, call me on 0161 408 1984. Okay? Not if you're a regular listener to this programme and if you're a supporter and a reader of David's work. More on that a bit later. Now, Boris Johnson, the UK Foreign Secretary, has warned EU leaders not to give the UK punishment beatings for Brexit in the manner of some World War II movie. He said, did Johnson, that penalising escape was not in the interests of our friends and our partners. Yesterday, as reported here, Theresa May set out her Brexit strategy, including leaving the EU single market. Now, the European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker promised to work for good results from Brexit talks. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court, listen up, this is important, has announced it will give its verdict next Tuesday on whether the government must get MPs' approval before actually triggering Article 50. So that Supreme Court hearing, which happened in December, their ruling will be early in the morning next Tuesday. And the BBC reports today, and this is hilarious, HSBC Bank announced it was prepared to move 1,000 staff from London to Paris when the UK leaves the European Union. Imagine that. HSBC have said, we're going to move 1,000 staff to Paris when the UK leaves the European Union. Do you know what I'd do with the HSBC? You know what I would do to them? I would penalise them for this. Now, you might remember that Nicholas Wilson, Mr. Ethical, has been on this programme a couple of times over the last 2 years. And he reported on a £750 million fraud perpetrated by HSBC and a subsidiary HFC Bank bought by HSBC back in 2003. Because when HSBC bought HFC Bank were fraudulently charging defaulting account holders with illegal charges. And it was doing that through its solicitors, Restons and Waitmans. And the fraud basically involved the accounts of John Lewis, Dixon's, Curry's, PC World and others. And Nicholas Wilson worked at Waitmans and reported HSBC to the Law Society. That was back in 2006, and the Law Society upheld his complaint that the charges were illegal. However, the charges continued to be applied until the Office of Fair Trading made an order against the bank to stop adding them. To this date, hundreds of thousands of victims have never been compensated by HSBC, who continues to lie pathologically about their liability. It's at least £750 million. You know what I would do? If I was the British government, you can move your 1,000 staff to Paris when you pay us £750 million. You gangsters. We'll take that money then and we'll plunge it straight into the NHS. That's not going to happen. You and I know that. If you've never heard Nicholas Wilson, go to our YouTube channel and look for Nicholas Wilson, Mr. Ethical, and you will hear those interviews with him. Fascinating stuff. Anyway, Boris Johnson. This is what Boris Johnson had to say. Have I got the clip? I have. I'm working hard today. This is Boris Johnson.
Disappointing facts is that in the last 25 years since the dawn of the single market, it's other countries, actually including India, that have done better at exporting into the single market than we in the UK have. So we have no terrors about this prospect. I think that if Monsieur Hollande wants to administer punishment beatings to anybody who chooses to escape, rather in the manner of some sort of World War II movie, then I don't think that is the way forward. And I think actually it's not in the interests of our friends.
Oh, there's been a big outcry, of course, today, a massive outcry. You can't say that. You can't mention Nazi concentration guards, or you can't mention concentration camps or the Second World War in any context. Sack Boris, anti-Semitism. What Johnson said was right, of course. Countries outside the bloc trade more with European Union countries than the UK. Now, as for insulting François Hollande, the French are world class when it comes to insulting the English.
You don't frighten us, English pig dogs. Go and boil your bottom, sons of a silly person. Blow my nose at you, so-called Arthur King. You and all your silly English kniggets. I don't want to talk to you no more, you empty-headed animal food trough whopper. I fart in your general direction. Your mother was a hamster and your father smelt of elderberries.
The French are bastards. Right, I meant to mention yesterday, incidentally, at the end of her speech on what the government would aim to achieve in the exit negotiations, Theresa May said, almost word for word, what I've been saying on this show and Sunday View for nearly a year.
Britain wants to remain a good friend and neighbour to Europe. Yet I know there are some voices calling for a punitive deal that punishes Britain and discourages other countries from taking the same path. That would be an act of calamitous self-harm for the countries of Europe, and it would not be the act of a friend. Britain would not, indeed we could not, accept such an approach. And while I am confident that this scenario need never arise, while I am sure a positive agreement can be reached, I am equally clear that no deal for Britain is better than a bad deal for Britain. Because we would still be able to trade with Europe. We would still be free to strike trade deals across the world, and we would have the freedom to set the competitive tax rates and embrace the policies that would attract the world's best companies and biggest investors to Britain. And if we were excluded from accessing the single market, we would be free to change the basis of Britain's economic model. But for the EU, it would mean new barriers to trade with one of the biggest economies in the world. It would jeopardise investments in Britain by EU companies worth more than £500 billion. It would mean a loss of access for European firms to the financial services of the City of London. It would risk exports from the EU to Britain worth around £290 billion every year. And it would disrupt the sophisticated and integrated supply chains upon which many EU companies rely.
In a nutshell, you'll punish nobody. Was Theresa May being sincere yesterday when she said that? It's hard to know, really. You know, a word that comes up on programmes like this is compartmentalisation. No idea what Theresa May knows or doesn't know. She's a puppet. She is a puppet. You know, the single market has never been a good thing for the UK, as we've said time and time again on this programme. Since 1973, the UK hasn't increased its trade with EU member states. Now, on that, here's Richard Tice. Now, Tice is the co-founder of Leave.eu and also Leave Means Leave. Richard Tice.
Every country in the world, as I've said many times, has access to the single market, except North Korea. The point is, we won't be a member of the single market. And the single market...
You want free access, don't you? And that's going to take a long time to get that deal.
The single market has been a really bad deal for the United Kingdom over the last 12 years. It's led to wage suppression of the lowest paid workers. It's led to unnecessary regulation for the 90% of businesses that don't export to the EU. We contribute a huge net contribution. We're the second biggest net contributor, and yet we have a huge deficit. I mean, they should be paying us, not we pay them. So it's been a bad deal. The sooner we leave it, the better. And I think people now finally are waking up to that.
Yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Drove wages down, destroyed industry, including fishing, and so on, so on, so on. You're with the Richie Allen Show, broadcasting live on davidicke.com, Fab Radio 2, alternatecurrentradio.com, and the TuneIn app. Let me mention that the terrific Boiler Room programme is live at 2 a.m. Friday morning UK time, which is 9 p.m. Eastern time on Thursday night on alternatecurrentradio.com. Now, I did some radio a bit earlier on. I did some work with Maria Heller, and I've had a lot going on today. I've been on the phone all day. My voice is a little bit croaky. I'm hoping it holds out for the rest of the programme. A bit dry, but we'll move on. Going to take a very quick break. When we come back from that, I'm going to talk about the campaign against anti-Semitism, who were eventually in touch with the programme today. I did email them yesterday and tweeted them early yesterday morning. They hadn't come back to me. I badgered them a little bit, and they eventually provided me with a statement, which I'm going to read you in about 90 seconds after these.
Do not risk putting another pound in your bank account until you've heard this message. It's Jim Rickards here, best-selling author of Currency Wars and The Death of Money. But today I'm urging you to claim a free copy of my brand new book, The Road to Ruin. Visit theroadtoruin.co.uk for full details now. Inside, I uncover the financial elite's secret ICE-9 plan to take full control of your hard-earned cash. To see how, visit theroadtoruin.co.uk right away. It's not too late to prepare. Claim your free copy at theroadtoruin.co.uk today.
Have you lost access to important data from a computer hard drive, mobile phone, or other storage device? Maybe you have a broken hard drive containing years of information, or a smartphone that no longer works from which you'd like the pictures, movies, and chats recovered. If you would like to recover data from any type of digital device, including desktop and laptop computers, external hard drives, cameras, smartphones, NAS, and RAID servers, then contact Data Clinic today at dataclinic.co.uk now.
There's a place high in the mountains of Spain, a sanctuary where souls gather from all around the globe to learn about themselves and experience powerful changes in the way we see our world. They become awakened to their gifts and their power to heal others. Become part of this ever-growing worldwide family of unique, pure energy healing practitioners. Discover how amazing you truly are. Go to www.markbayerski.com. It could just change your life forever.
Broadcasting the information the mainstream media won't touch. This is The Richie Allen Show in association with davidicke.com.
Welcome back to the show. Thanks for tuning in. Wednesday, 18th of January 2017. Good to be chatting with you. Lots of tweets there. We'll come back to the tweets at some stage and get into them. Thanks for that. And thanks to those of you, including Diddy. Diddy, how are you? It's actually Rachel, but it's Diddy Rachel on Twitter, who did write to investigations at antisemitism.uk. It seems a lot of people who went to see David Icke on Saturday did take up Stephen Silverman's request or his invitation to email him with their experience. Many of them have copied that to the email address we gave you earlier on, which was publishing@davidicke.com. Let me just repeat that. publishing@davidicke.com. So if you were at the event on Saturday and you want to email the campaign against anti-Semitism, email investigations@antisemitism.uk and please copy that to publishing@davidicke.com. Thanks to Diddy Rachel. Love these Twitter names. Good stuff for your message on Twitter. So, Stephen Silverman and the campaign against anti-Semitism. Just a reminder, last week they contacted the venue, the O2 Apollo Theatre. In fact, strangely enough, as I pointed out yesterday, it was a bizarre sequence of events. The Guardian and then Channel 4 News asking to speak with David. This is very unusual in itself. It's not unusual. He gets asked from time to time by these mainstream publications to speak, but not like that. And then after he'd agreed to talk to Channel 4 News, the venue was contacted by the campaign against anti-Semitism, who made a number of ridiculous allegations about David, saying he was racist and anti-Semitic, and they attributed to David statements that he has never made. All very bizarre, and I didn't believe in any way coincidental. So yesterday morning I tweeted Mr. Silverman. Later yesterday afternoon I emailed him and I said, please come on the programme to tell us why you believe that the man is anti-Semitic, why David Icke is anti-Semitic, and let's have a broader discussion then about what anti-Semitism means. And I assure you, excuse me again, I'm drying up here. I assured them and him that they would be treated with the utmost courtesy and we would have a conversation. So I didn't hear from them. So this morning I tweeted them and emailed them again, and they eventually got back to me. I want to reiterate, if you went to the event on Saturday, if you've ever genuinely attended a David Icke talk, a 12-hour talk by David Icke, if you were there and if you came away thinking the man is racist and is anti-Semitic, call me on 0161 408 1984. Do not call me if you are a supporter of David's work and if you are if you've been following him and if you generally agree with his theories on Zionism. Don't call me looking for dissenters, and I'll tell you why in a minute. So they got back to me today anyway, the campaign against anti-Semitism. Hi Richie, thank you for your interest and for the invitation to appear on your show. We do not normally give interviews to digital-only stations. We do not normally give interviews to digital-only stations. Then they said, with regards to David Icke, we can, however, provide the following comment. And they just repeated and regurgitated that Stephen Silverman, the Director of Investigations and Enforcement, at Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, says that David Icke is a modern-day hate preacher who seeks to spread the belief that a Jewish conspiracy, blah, 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 blah. Then they went on to say to me today, with regard to the definition of anti-Semitism, we called for Theresa May to adopt the international definition of anti-Semitism, which you can find on our website, antisemitism.uk/definition. Pretty shabby that, eh? Digital radio. First of all, give me a break. It's all digital radio now. It's all DAB. It's all internet. It's all apps. And the TuneIn app, which is the biggest provider of radio programs and stations in the world, we're on there and we have thousands of followers. It's all very unsportsmanlike, I said today to a friend of mine. Poor form, old chap. Poor form. What you're doing, basically, is throwing out allegations against the man. You're casting aspersions on his character, and then you are running and hiding. Because you don't want to engage. Because your evidence is flimsy, threadbare. It's not even flimsy and threadbare, is it? It doesn't exist. There's no evidence. None. Now, before they emailed me this statement today, before they emailed me, I first of all tweeted them and said, show me some courtesy, please respond. Now, a guy called Marlon Solomon, who claims to live in Manchester, I say claims still, he probably does, I don't know. I don't know anything about him. He's a blogger of some description. And on the 4th of January, he wrote a blog basically saying that David Icke is a fascist and why we should care very much about his appearance, his forthcoming appearance at the O2 Apollo. Now, Solomon never bothered his arse going to the Apollo on Saturday to in any way confirm what he was saying in his blog, which is a long-winded piece of puerile claptrap which goes nowhere, rehashing and repeating and regurgitating tired old bollocks about David, long debunked, as I said yesterday, by prominent members of the Jewish community. So when I tweeted the campaign against anti-Semitism today to say, come on guys, what's going on? This guy, this Marlon Solomon, he said, ask me. So I asked him. And I asked him again. And I said, email me your details. And he was ignoring me. And as he was ignoring me, he was tweeting others. But I'm like a dog with a bone. I was persistent. So eventually, he emailed me. What did he say in the email? Can't make tonight. I might come on in the future. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Now, I said he was gutless, which he said was an insult. That isn't an insult. It is a gutless thing to do. To jump into a conversation I was having with the campaign against anti-Semitism, in which I was clearly asking them to come on tonight, to say, ask me. Then when he was asked, he ran and he hid. Ran and hid. When he volunteered to come on, he knew I was talking about tonight when I was tweeting Silverman. He knew it. And this is what they do, these people. They play with people's lives, call them racists. They harass venues like the O2. And, well, they move on to another target. They offer no evidence. We'll come to evidence in a minute. You're going to be laughing quite hard shortly. No evidence. They move on to another target. Now, in David, of course, they picked on the wrong target. Because most people, when they're accused of anti-Semitism, their first instinct is to condemn anti-Semitism. Now, I don't know why anybody does that. I don't know why Jeremy Corbyn has done it, and others in the past. Your party's anti-Semitic. Well, we condemn anti-Semitism wherever it exists. What the hell is that all about? What are you doing that for? That's self-evident. Don't say that. Say, who said I was anti-Semitic? Based on what? Go for them. I don't mean aggressively. I don't mean bullying in a bullying manner. Go for them. Stand up for yourself. What do you mean? Garbage. Have you even read what I've written? Have you ever come to one of my talks? That's the way to do it. None of this, oh, we condemn it. Garbage. You're on the back foot straight away. Like I said earlier on, I understand they've been flooded with emails today from people who were at the O2, flooded. We've received copies of many. Now, these friends of Israel, these Zionists, hiding behind charities, who funds these people, I wonder? Where are they getting the money to take prosecutions against private citizens? I say prosecutions because they're currently prosecuting a woman who wrote a song, I understand. I was looking at an article in the Mail today. Where are they getting the money for that? That's something I'm looking into. And I'm pretty good at looking into stuff. I'll be reporting on that soon enough. Intellectual lightweights. I mean, we're dealing with intellectual lightweights and we're dealing with cowards. Bedroom-dwelling keyboard warriors who troll people and say things about people, given the opportunity to come on what is virtually a national programme, such as the size of our audience. That's not bragging. It's just a fact. What did he do? Run and hide. Now, I mentioned last night, and I'm mentioning again today, in the campaign against anti-Semitism's internal correspondence amongst themselves, and in the email they sent to the O2 warning them off David and the event, is they did link to a video they said was proof that David Icke was racist and in fact he was anti-Semitic. I swear to you, and you know you're dealing with a professionally produced programme here. There's no smoke and mirrors. There's no spin. This is the evidence produced by the campaign against anti-Semitism. This is the evidence they say proves that David Icke is guilty of anti-Semitism. I kid you not. Have a listen.
First of all, we as a human race have got to get our fricking heads around what this is, because it ain't what we're told it is. It's not about what's right and beneficial for Jewish people. Jewish people are its victims, not its beneficiaries. Jewish people have been hung out to dry again and again by this crowd that claim to have their best interests at heart, like hell they do. That's why I call this Rothschild Zionism. It was created by them, it is controlled by them to this minute, and it was created as a secret society within the web to massively contribute to the manipulation and control of our global society and individual countries, etc., etc. It's Rothschild Zionism. Anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism, not that anti-Semitism means what we think it does, because Zionism is not about Jewish people. Even in its play-out way or world, it is a political system, a political philosophy. At its core, it is a secret society putting its agents in places of power. One of the very few things that Joe Biden, Vice President of the United States, has ever said, which is true, is you don't have to be Jewish to be a Zionist. Because of the propaganda, we equate Zionism with Jewish people. It's not how it is. To a very, very large extent. How many people know this? How many Jewish people around the world are protesting, have organizations created to protest against Zionism? Zionism and Judaism are diametrically opposed. Zionism is state-organized terror. How many times do we see this in the newspapers? Never. End of Zionism equals peace. Israel, stop killing Palestinians. I am Jewish and I want that. Why don't we hear about this? We condemn any Zionist aggression against Iran. I thought every Jewish person in the world wanted to bomb Iran. That's what the media seem to give us an indication about. Another Jew against Zionism. Over and over. Zionist spokesmen do not represent world Jewry. How many people... I thought Ahmadinejad of Iran is supposed to be the great demon of all Jewish people. Look at it. The demonization comes from Rothschild Zionism. We've been totally misled about what it is. Rothschild dynasty created Israel. It paid for the first people out of Europe to go and people Israel after the war. It paid for the building of the Knesset. It paid for the building of the Supreme Court building with all its Illuminati symbols all over it. And some of the people who've broken out of the family, I quote one of them in my book, have actually said, and as I've been saying for years, because it's bloody obvious, that Israel is not the homeland of Jewish people, it is the fiefdom of the Rothschild dynasty, created out of Rothschild Zionism, a secret society. And Rothschild Zionism has been used via Israel to devastate, slaughter, torture an entire nation of human beings, while claiming to be against terrorism. This is the dictionary definition of genocide: the systematic and widespread extermination or attempted extermination of an entire national, racial, religious or ethnic group. Never can what is happening in Palestine and Gaza have been described so accurately. More and more people killed through war, killed through bombing attacks, killed through shootings, killed through lack of food and adequate medical care. Gaza, the most crowded piece of land on earth, is little more, ironically, than a concentration camp. And the world looks on.
Right. That's the evidence put forward by the campaign against anti-Semitism to suggest that David Icke is a racist anti-Semite. I don't need to say any more, really, on that. One of the things that, I mean, that's probably 5.5 minutes of a 25-minute clip. One of the things David goes on to talk about is how Jewish Americans make up about 2% or just under of the overall population in the United States. 2%, right? And many of those Jewish Americans, of course, won't be Zionists and will be absolutely against the policies and the activities of the Israeli government. But he goes on then to, the reason bringing that up, to talk about the amount of Zionists and Jewish lobbied and Jewish, we're talking about AIPAC here, the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee. How many of these people ended up in very, very senior positions in the administrations of Obama and W. Bush and Clinton and so on, so on, so on. And I was thinking about this today. I was thinking about Cynthia McKinney, who was on this programme, has been on it many times, the two-time Georgia Congresswoman, the first African-American Congresswoman ever to win a seat in Congress from the state of Georgia. And she told me in great detail on the programme around about a year ago, she's been on since, but she told me about the extent of the control of the AIPAC lobby acting on behalf of the Israeli government, the extent of their control on US politics. And this is worth playing again. Cynthia McKinney talking to me about AIPAC.
I tell you what was an eye-opener for me when during my very first campaign was the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, because I had never seen anything like what I experienced with them was sheer torture. What happened was I received a fax from them, and the fax said it was like a pledge, and I needed to, sign my name and send it back to them, and they would keep a record, that you made this pledge that you were going to support Israel. And so it had some stipulations on there, military superiority, aid, what else? Oh, Jerusalem was the capital city. And I said, I'm not even sworn in yet. Can you give me a chance to get involved, to get inside the system, learn the issue, and then I'll get back to you?
Brilliant, yeah. Common sense.
Common sense, maybe, but not political practice. I was hounded from that moment on, whether it was a women's organization or an environmental organization. What I learned was that the operatives for the Israeli lobby, they control women's organizations, environmental organizations. It really didn't matter what peace organizations, everything is a fraud. And so I would say, okay, I want to get your endorsement from the environmentalists or the women's organizations. And I would get a call saying, well, did you sign the pledge? Now, this ostensibly is from a women's organization. I'm a woman. I'm the only woman running.
Yeah.
And I needed to sign the pledge before I could even get looked at. Peace organization. You signed the pledge. Environmental organization. Oh, we can't support you. You didn't sign the pledge. What I learned, of course, I went through and did a whole lot of researching. And then I discovered that Gus Savage, member of Congress from Chicago, had also been targeted by them before my arrival. And he put his experience on the congressional record for the world to see if they, would care to read about it. And what he said is what I discovered. And that is that every aspect of the political process is in some way or other controlled or influenced by people who are affiliated with the pro-Israel lobby. So the name of the organization might be the New Jersey Garden Club, But in actuality, it's them. And so what his experience was that his opponent was getting thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars from organizations like the Garden Club. That's an example that Gus Savage used. And he started investigating to say, well, why is the New Jersey Garden Club contributing money to my opponent in Chicago? And then he found the links. And that's what happened to me. I had people from all over the United States sending money to my opponent at the word. And then we were able to come by a letter where the person who was soliciting funds for my opponent said she's not friendly to Israel. I had one person to write a letter. He was writing a letter all over Georgia. And that letter said, when we go to her office, we are received very well. And she always meets with her constituents. She votes very well on our issues. We have no complaint with her representation except for Israel. And for that reason, this person was writing a letter saying, for that reason, he wasn't going to support me, and was asking the people who received the letter not to support me either.
What level of how I'm struggling for the words here because it's extraordinary. This, how many men and women in the United States who take an interest in current affairs would know that goes on, Cynthia? I would guess it's very, very small.
It's very small, and that's why they are able to get away with it. So what I did was I went public. I would have people call me up. Like I had this one guy, he's a comedian. He called me up and he said, I'd like to do a fundraiser for you. And we go 2-3 weeks into the planning, and I think, wow, I got I'm going to have a fundraiser. And then they pop the question, did you sign the pledge? And I'd have to say, no, I didn't. And then they would hang up the phone, click up. And I got that over and over again. I had one event with Tipper Gore. We were already all the way into the planning. And lady had offered to host it at her house. We're all the way in, invitations in the mail, out, gone. And then she asked me, did you sign the pledge? So now I've got Tipper Gore coming to town. I've got invitations hitting the mail. And she tells me that I can't have the event at her house if I don't sign the pledge.
If I don't sign the pledge. It's exactly 15 minutes to the top of the hour. This is why the campaign against anti-Semitism will not debate in public somebody like David Icke or a presenter or a producer like me, because they know that they're going to be challenged on these issues. They're going to be challenged on going way back to the Balfour Declaration. They're going to be challenged about the behaviour of the State of Israel right up until, including the present day, 1948, the ethnic cleansing of Palestine, all of this, who the Rothschild banking cartel are. These are the reasons they won't come on programmes like this and debate us. Of course, they'll speak to Newsnight or BBC Radio 5 Live whenever they get the chance, because the segment will be 3 or 4 minutes long and they won't be asked a single question. They certainly won't be. We're going to leave it for now. Like I said earlier on, it's a real shame these people didn't have the gumption to accept our invitation to come on the programme and give over a segment, a full segment of the programme to discussing it. However, I leave the invitation wide open. If anybody connected with the campaign against anti-Semitism, or Marlon Solomon, or anybody else who claims, without ever having attended a davidicke.com, a David Icke talk or anything like that, or ever having read a book, if they want to come on this programme and tell me and our listeners why they think David Icke is anti-Semitic, they are welcome to do so. But they won't. And they won't because the evidence they offered is that clip I played earlier on of David explaining exactly what Zionism is. I'm not going to go over it. Why it's as anti-Judaism as it gets. Why it is a plague on the Jewish people themselves. Leave it there. Right, 13 minutes to the top of the hour. Like I said, someday they might, get out of their bedrooms, get away from their computers and their social media, and man up or woman up and come on, in the interest of fairness and fair play, have a rational discussion about what anti-Semitism constitutes. I'm going to say for the final time what my position is. And I'm going to give you what my position on Israel is. Israel is an apartheid state. It is a barbaric, murderous, human rights abusing country. Government, I should say. Government in Tel Aviv, who keeps hundreds of thousands of people imprisoned in the biggest open-air prison in the world. Tortures them. Tortures their children. Detains their children illegally. Defies the United Nations by building properties on occupied territory, bulldozing homes, terrorising people, terrorising children. And if that isn't bad enough, what's really behind that and the reasons that goes on, that's what these people are terrified of. Hence, when anybody talks about it, anti-Semitism. I support the BDS movement. I support sanctioning Israel. You anti-Semite. You're anti-Semitic. You're anti-Semitic. You're racist. Netanyahu's a murderer and it's an apartheid state. You're a racist. No, I'm not. We condemn that which goes on in Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, North Korea, Israel. We never stop on this programme talking about human rights abuses by regimes around the world. I'm going to leave it now. I am going to leave it finally.